I'm 76 years old, and I haven't been touched in that way for almost 13 years. I don't say that with drama. It's just a fact. 13 years since my husband died. 12 since anyone kissed me with intention. 10 since I stopped pretending that something might still happen. People don't talk about sex after 60. They joke about it, maybe. They make it sound ridiculous or unnecessary. But no one tells you what it feels like when that part of your life slowly goes quiet. Not in one sudden moment, but little by little. Like a room in the house you stop using. You forget to open the door. And then one day you realize it's been locked for years and the key is nowhere to be found. My name is Martha. I was married for 48 years. 48. When I say it aloud now, it feels like a lifetime. We married when I was 21. Back then, sex wasn't something we analyzed. It was just part of being married, awkward at first, clumsy, tender in its own way. I didn't grow up in a home where affection was displayed. My parents slept in separate beds as long as I can remember. I thought that was normal, and maybe it was. So when I married Thomas, I didn't have a blueprint. I just followed his lead. In our 20s, desire came easily. Bodies were forgiving. We didn't have to plan anything. I remember one night early on in our tiny apartment above a bakery when the oven timer dinged while we were tangled together on the couch. We both laughed so hard it hurt. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive. It was ours, ordinary, and ordinary felt sacred when it happened behind closed doors. In our 30s, life got busier, 2 children, a mortgage, laundry that never seemed to end. Sex became something squeezed in between exhaustion. Sometimes I was too tired, sometimes he was. There were months when it felt like another item on a list. I didn't resent it, not really, but I didn't always cherish it either. Looking back now, I see how much I took for granted, the ease of being wanted without having to ask for it, the simple comfort of closeness. You assume there will always be another night. You assume there will be enough time. That assumption is a quiet thief that steals more than you realize. By our 40s, things shifted again. The children were older. We had more privacy. Thomas would reach for my hand while we watched television. I remember one evening, the house finally quiet, and he looked at me in a way that made me feel 20 again. Not because my body looked the same. It didn't. But because he knew it, every scar, every softness. There's something about being desired by someone who has watched you age. It isn't about perfection. It's about recognition. I remember a Thursday night in particular when the children were at a friend's house for a sleepover. We had poured wine and sat on the porch. I was wearing a cardigan that I thought was unremarkable. He touched my shoulder and said softly, "You're beautiful tonight." I almost choked on the words. Beautiful? Me? I laughed nervously and told him he was drunk, but later, lying in bed, I felt it linger, that touch, that look. That was desire without urgency, tenderness without expectation. I think that's when I realized intimacy could be more than lust. It could be love in its slowest, softest form. In my 50s, my body began to change in ways I didn't fully understand. Menopause arrived like an uninvited guest, heat rising in my chest, sleepless nights, dryness that made intimacy uncomfortable at times. I didn't always tell Thomas. I didn't want to seem difficult. I thought enduring quietly was part of being a good wife. He tried to be patient, but we didn't talk about it the way we probably should have. There was embarrassment on my side, confusion on his. Sex became less frequent, but when it happened, it was slower, gentler, less urgent. I remember one winter evening wrapped in a blanket by the fire. Thomas traced patterns across my hand while I leaned against his chest. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth seep in. No words were necessary. That was intimacy too. Sometimes more powerful than the physical act itself. Then he died, a heart attack, sudden. I was 63, too young, people said, as if there's a right age to lose the person who knows your body like a map. The months afterward were a blur. Grief consumes everything. You can barely remember to eat, let alone imagine being touched. The bed felt enormous. I slept on my side, facing the wall. I kept expecting to feel his weight shift beside me. Nights were hardest. The silence is sharpest in the hours when you are most vulnerable. I would lie there, listening to my own breath and think of the way he used to reach across the bed in the night, the warmth, the rhythm. I thought I could bear it. I thought I could simply live with the absence. But that absence has its own gravity. Months passed, then a year. The sharpness of grief softened into something steadier. That's when I noticed it, the absence, not just of him, but of touch. It's strange what you miss, the brush of a hand on your lower back, the weight of an arm across your waist at night. The casual intimacy of standing close in the kitchen. Sex at that point wasn't about desire first. It was about contact, about not feeling invisible in your own skin. I began to notice the ache in my body where his used to be. It didn't scream, it whispered quietly, persistently. You can live without it, yes, but you also feel its absence in everything you do, in every time you reach for yourself and remember he isn't there. I was 65 when a widower from church began walking me to my car after services. His name was Daniel. He was kind, soft-spoken. He had lost his wife 3 years earlier. We started having coffee once a week. Nothing improper, just conversation. I looked forward to it more than I expected, but I remember the first time his hand lingered slightly on mine across the table. It startled me, not because it was unwelcome, but because it woke something up I had carefully folded away. I went home that afternoon and stood in front of my bathroom mirror longer than usual. I studied my face, the lines around my mouth, the softness beneath my chin. I wondered what he saw, and I realized something frightening. I still wanted to be desired. I still wanted that recognition, that intimate acknowledgement of being a woman, not just an older person. We dated quietly for several months. At our age, dating feels almost secretive even when it isn't. There's a sense that you're stepping into territory people think belongs to the young. One evening, he kissed me, gently, slowly. I felt both warmth and panic. My body responded, but my mind filled with questions. Am I allowed to want this? Is this disloyal? Is it foolish at my age? No one prepares you for how complicated desire becomes after 60. You carry the weight of past grief, of a life already mapped, of physical changes that are unspoken, but the feeling is still there, and it can be startling, beautiful even, terrifying certainly. You remember that you are still alive in a way that goes beyond survival. We became intimate. I won't describe it in detail. That's not necessary. What I will say is that it was different, slower, more cautious. My body didn't respond the way it had decades earlier. There was discomfort at first, hesitation. We had to talk more, adjust more. There's a vulnerability in undressing in front of someone new at 65. Your body carries history, stretch marks, surgical scars, the pull of gravity. Every movement is measured differently, every touch interpreted with a lifetime of experience. But there is also tenderness in it. Two older people, aware of time, choosing closeness anyway. That choice has weight. It is deliberate. It is brave in a way that youth cannot understand. It didn't last. Daniel's health began to decline. Diabetes complications, hospital visits. He grew withdrawn, embarrassed by his limitations. Intimacy became rare, not because we didn't care, but because his body wouldn't cooperate and mine was tired too. Eventually we drifted apart, no anger, just fatigue, and that's another truth no one likes to talk about. At this age, sex doesn't just end because passion fades. It ends because the body intervenes, because grief intervenes, because practicality, the cold, quiet pragmatism of life, becomes more pressing than desire. And the result is a slow, gentle disappearance rather than a sudden heartbreak. After that, I stopped trying, not out of bitterness, out of honesty. Life without sex after 60 doesn't announce itself. It just becomes your routine. You fold laundry, you water plants, you watch the news. Weeks pass, then months, then years. Your body quiets. The urgency fades, but the memory doesn't. I still remember what it felt like to be wanted, to be held with intention. That memory is both comforting and painful. It is a thread that reminds me of a life fully lived, a connection that once existed and will never return in the same way. There's also something else no one mentions. When sex leaves your life, part of your identity shifts. You're no longer someone's lover. You're a grandmother, a widow, a neighbor. These are honorable roles, vital roles. But they don't carry heat. You lose a certain visibility in the world, a certain acknowledgement that your body is still capable of stirring desire. Sometimes I miss that heat. I miss being seen as a woman, not just as someone elderly, careful, experienced. But I also don't miss the anxiety, the wondering if my body would cooperate, the vulnerability of exposing myself physically and emotionally again. There is a strange peace in knowing that chapter has likely closed. Acceptance settles in quietly in the spaces where urgency once lived. The turning point came 2 years ago. I slipped in my kitchen and fractured my wrist. Nothing dramatic, but enough to require help. My daughter stayed with me for a week. She moved through the house confidently, cooking meals, organizing things. One night, as she helped me into bed, I realized something quietly. If I were to begin another intimate relationship now, at 76, it would likely end in caregiving. Either I would nurse someone again, or someone would nurse me. I have done that already. I have sat beside hospital beds. I have watched machines monitor a man I loved. I have whispered goodbye. I am not sure I want to tie my remaining years to that kind of ending again. That realization didn't feel tragic. It felt clear. And there's a comfort in clarity that I didn't know when I was younger. Life without sex after 60 isn't empty. It's different. There are other forms of intimacy. I hold my granddaughter's hand when we walk to the park. I hug my friends longer than I used to. I sit close to my sister on the couch when she visits. Touch changes shape. It softens. It becomes less about desire and more about connection, about presence. Do I ever feel lonely in my body? Yes, especially at night, especially when the sheets are cool and there is no one to warm them. But loneliness at this age is layered. It isn't just about physical desire. It's about shared history, about someone who knows why you prefer the lamp on instead of the overhead light. About someone who understands the quiet rhythms of your life without having to ask. I don't regret the years I had. I regret the times I treated intimacy as routine instead of sacred. I regret the nights I turned away because I was tired, assuming there would be endless tomorrows. There aren't. If you are younger and listening to me, don't dismiss physical closeness as trivial. It weaves threads between you that last longer than you think. And if you are over 60 and wondering whether desire still belongs to you, it does. It may look different. It may require patience and honesty, but it does not disappear overnight. As for me, I have made peace with where I am. My body is quieter now, softer, less demanding. I wake up, make my tea, open the curtains, and let the house fill with light. Some mornings I feel the ache of absence. Other mornings I feel gratitude for having known that kind of closeness at all. 13 years without that touch. It sounds like a long time. It is. But it doesn't erase the 48 years that came before it. At 76, I no longer measure my life by what has stopped. I measure it by what I was fortunate enough to experience. And sometimes when I lie in bed at night, I place my own hand over my heart and remember that it once beat wildly beneath someone else's palm. That for now is enough. I'm not lonely in the way I once feared. I'm aware. I'm patient with myself. I'm conscious of the life that still moves around me, my children, my grandchildren, my friends, the garden, the little rituals of making tea, tidying the kitchen, sitting quietly in the morning light. And sometimes, just sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still feel the warmth of a hand on mine. And I am reminded that intimacy is not only in bodies pressed together, it is in memory, in touch, in acknowledgement, in the gentle presence of someone who has loved you completely. At 76, life has a different rhythm. Desire becomes a memory that sits beside you, quiet but persistent. You learn to live with it without bitterness. You learn to cherish the closeness that exists in other forms: conversation, shared meals, laughter, holding hands, watching a sunset together. That is intimacy too, though softer. And perhaps in a way it lasts longer. It survives beyond bodies. It survives beyond age. It survives in the mind and heart of a woman who has loved fully and continues to do so in the ways she can. I am Martha. I am 76. I am alive. I am quiet. I am aware. And I have made peace with a life that is full, even without the physical touch I once thought I could not live without. It is enough. It will have to be enough. And for now, it is.